There's that scene in Godfather 2 where Michael Corleone tells Hyman Roth while they're down in Cuba that he knows Castro is going to defeat Batista because Michael saw a Castro loyalist jump on a hand grenade. Michael said Batista's army was just paid mercenaries. And he said Batista can't beat Castro because Castro's army, it's loyalists. Well, you're hearing a lot about the polls showing an incredibly tight race. These presidential elections are always tight, especially right around now. I've told you the polls will not show Kamala Harris cracking open the electoral map until 24 hours before Election Day. This is what happened in 1980 when Ronald Reagan was running against Jimmy Carter. She's going to win because Donald Trump has completely outsourced his ground game. Now, in a tight race, a good ground game is the difference between 1 to 3 percentage points in key battleground states. Trump has almost opened 0 field offices in Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. He has no evangelicals. Because he tacked to the center on abortion, he's lost the evangelicals. They have one of the great door-knocking, get-out-the-vote machines in electoral politics. Well, the evangelicals have forsaken him. He has no surrogates campaigning for him. Bill Clinton, Obama, they're all over the place. Trump has nobody. Nikki Haley was supposed to join the Trump campaign, but he reportedly alienated her. How unlike Donald Trump to alienate somebody. Trump has 0 ground game. Instead, he's keeping all the donations, and Elon Musk is now spending $100 million on Trump's ground game, especially in Arizona, Nevada, and Pennsylvania. A little later on in this show, I'm going to tell you what a disaster Elon Musk's ground game has turned out to be. This is worse than Twitter. Musk is relying on mercenaries, paid mercenaries, who are walking off the job because they're not getting paid. These are canvassers. These are people who are supposed to knock on doors and convince people to vote for Donald Trump. But they're not loyalists. They're mercenaries who are now being accused by Elon Musk of committing fraud. Not good with 2 weeks left in the race when the guy in charge of your ground game is accusing your canvassers of fraud. This is a disaster because everything Donald Trump touches is a disaster. I'm not saying the polls are wrong. This is going to be tight. But without loyalists, without volunteers willing to swim through mud, jump on that proverbial grenade that Michael Corleone talked about, well, without loyalists, with just mercenaries, Donald Trump is Batista and Kamala Harris is Castro. More on all this later on today's show. November 5th is only 13 days away, with 15 million Americans having already cast their ballots. A brand new USA Today survey shows early voters favor Democrats 2-1, and we are seeing record turnout in key swing states like Georgia and North Carolina. 52% of Trump supporters say they plan to vote on Election Day, as opposed to 35% of Harris supporters. Ominously, a new survey from the Brookings Institute shows 1/5 of all Republicans think Trump should challenge results after he loses. 1/5 of Republicans surveyed by Brookings say Donald Trump should, quote, do whatever it takes to assume office. 30% of Trump voters who say they trust Fox News as their most reliable source for information, 30% of them say Trump should resort to violence in order to take the Oval Office. Violence. During a campaign stop in North Carolina yesterday, Donald Trump refused to condemn threats of violence made against FEMA workers cleaning up after Hurricane Helene. Listen to this. It's incredible.
An armed gunman was arrested and charged with making threats against FEMA workers 2 Saturdays ago. FEMA had a safety stand down because of continued credible threats. Is it helping the recovery effort in North Carolina to keep making these claims that FEMA's not doing their job?
Well, I think you have to let people know how they're doing. If they were doing a great job, I think we should say that too, because I think they should be rewarded. But if they're not doing, does that mean that if they're doing a poor job, we're supposed to not say it? These people are entitled to say it. And these are honest people behind us. If FEMA were doing well, they would be saying they did a good job. They're not.
Violence as a form of speech. That's what Donald Trump is saying. Michigan has one of the largest Arab American populations in America. Arriving in Detroit over the weekend, Trump was asked if the assassination of Hamas's leader, Yahya Sinwar, makes things easier. Trump used that question as an opportunity to praise Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's total war in the Middle East. You tell me if Donald Trump is going to get votes in Michigan saying this.
Does that make it easier or more difficult?
I think it makes it easier.
Why is that?
You going to talk to Prime Minister Netanyahu about it?
He's called me, yes.
What was that conversation?
He's called me. I have not spoken. I'm going to speak to him probably now.
What are you going to tell him?
Well, look, he's doing a good job. Biden is trying to hold him back. Just so you understand, Biden is far superior to the VP. He's trying to hold him back, and he probably should be doing the opposite, actually. I'm glad that VP decided to do what he had to do, but it's moving along pretty good.
Moving along pretty good in the Middle East. Trump stopped talking to Netanyahu after Netanyahu called Joe Biden in December of 2020 to congratulate him on winning the presidency. Immediately after October 7th, Trump blamed Netanyahu because Netanyahu was disloyal to Donald Trump because he called Joe Biden to congratulate him. According to the Washington Post, Trump's Save America PAC, which raised hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, is now broke. Of course it is. And where did the money go? Set up immediately after Trump lost the 2020 presidential election, Trump raised hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars for the Save America PAC, promising to investigate voter fraud. But he never found a single shred of evidence of voter fraud, and he never paid his investigators. Bernard Carrick, Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell, Jenna Ellis, all those investigators never got paid. Where did the money go? We don't know. We know that during the past 4 years, the Save America PAC has served as Trump's chief financial source, paying his legal fees, which some say so far is north of $100 million. Some of that money also goes towards paying the legal fees for Trump's accomplices, so long as they don't become witnesses for the prosecution. Ask Cassidy Hutchinson about that. According to the Washington Post, the Save America PAC only raised $1.4 million in September, while it spent $4 million. Donald Trump spending more money than he has. Who would have guessed? The Post says his Save America PAC only has $2 million in cash and owes $5 million in legal fees. He's going to need more money for legal fees. Trump is now being sued by the Central Park Five for defamation. In 1989, you might remember the Central Park Five were falsely convicted for the rape of a Central Park jogger. Trump back then spent $85,000 on full-page ads in New York's 5 major newspapers calling for their executions. He said because of these guys, New York needs to bring back the death penalty. 10 years later, DNA evidence cleared them of all the charges and they were released from prison having their youth ripped from them. Asked during his debate with Kamala Harris to apologize to the Central Park Five, Trump refused, claiming the men, quote unquote, killed the Central Park jogger. Well, that woman was not killed. She was raped. But Trump maintained during the debate that they were guilty. And then he added former New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg agreed with him. Bloomberg should sue Trump for defamation as well. The New Republic reports that during the 2016 campaign, Trump continued to claim the Central Park Five were guilty. At one point, he said, quote, "The fact that that case was settled with so much evidence against them is outrageous." Lawyers for the five gentlemen, the Central Park Five, say they are suing Trump for defamation, seeking both punitive and compensatory damages. Well, let's get into our time machine, shall we? And watch a commercial from the future. I believe it would be 2026.
For more than 30 years, McDonald's has been working with state and local corrections facilities to create meaningful work and training opportunities for rapists, con artists, tax cheats, and insurrectionists who are paying their debt to society behind bars. At McDonald's, we believe everyone deserves a second chance, even liars, cheats, and serial rapists like Donald Trump. That's why we work with law enforcement to help shape temporary work release programs that prepare convicted rapists, insurrectionists, and tax cheats like Donald Trump for life on the outside. Granted, this is 2026. Donald Trump is in his 80s, and the odds of his ever living long enough to be freed from the watchful eye of America's criminal justice system are slim to none. But by allowing Donald Trump to serve fries and chat with customers in a safe environment under police supervision, we here at McDonald's remain committed to giving everyone a second chance. Because, young or old, we all deserve a break today. And never forget, Donald Trump is an adjudicated rapist with at least 30 credible sexual assault allegations made against him.
A new Journal of American Medicine study shows that infant mortality in the United States has increased significantly in the 2 years since the Supreme Court overturned Roe. According to the BBC, 10 states will have abortion on the ballot next month. These measures are expected to animate liberal voters, especially women. Those 10 states are Montana, where Senator Jon Tester, Democrat, is in a tight race for re-election; Arizona, a swing state that Joe Biden won in 2020; Missouri, where Republican Senator Josh Hawley is running against Democrat Lucas Kunce; Nebraska, where Republican Senator Deb Fischer is in a tight race against union activist and independent Dan Osborne; Colorado, Maryland, Nevada, a swing state, New York, and South Dakota. The 10th state is Florida. John Wilson, Florida's Department of Health General Counsel, in a sworn affidavit released yesterday, said he was ordered by Governor Ron DeSantis to sign and then mail letters to the general managers of local television stations who were running ads in support of Florida's pro-choice initiative on the November ballot. In the letter that Wilson didn't write, the general counsel didn't write, he threatened to fine the general managers and imprison them if they failed to comply. He was saying, cease and desist, stop running these pro-choice ads or we're going to lock you up. Wilson, in his sworn affidavit, said he didn't write the letters that he put his name to. He was ordered by Ron DeSantis to sign them. He then quit his job in mid-October after working as the general counsel for the Florida Health Department for more than a decade. Wilson, in his sworn affidavit, said DeSantis has just hired 2 corporate law firms to assist him and the Republican Party in fighting false political advertisements. And these law firms, at a cost to taxpayers, these law firms will be charging taxpayers $1.4 million. That would be book banning Ron DeSantis, Mr. Champion of free speech. Yes, there's somebody even worse than J.D. Vance, Ron DeSantis. Okay, let's talk about the polls. According to a joint project by The Economist and YouGov, for the first time in 2 months, their election model simulations now show Donald Trump has taken the lead in the race for 270 electoral votes. Now, I pay extra for these polls, and much of the granular research I do is based on the work of YouGov and The Economist. I know we want Trump to disappear, and he will. But Trump is like climate change. He won't disappear if we just ignore the threat. So I can't infantilize my listeners the way Bret Baier from Fox News said Fox News viewers should be infantilized. In the $750 million settlement with Dominion, and I got that wrong. I said it was $250 million. Thank you for correcting me. Dominion settled with Fox News for $750 million. They sued for defamation because Fox News kept lying and saying Dominion switched votes from Trump to Biden. And Fox had to retract that. In released discovery, conversations were held right after the election, and Bret Baier, who interviewed Kamala Harris, said during a meeting of Fox News executives that we let our viewers down by declaring Arizona for Biden too early. It was insensitive. This is what Bret Baier said. He said it was insensitive and cruel to our viewers. He said we needed to ease them into the truth, not just throw it right in their face. Terrifying. So I'm not going to do that to my listeners. Now, I know Kamala Harris is going to win this, but I'm not going to infantilize the listeners and not tell you what good, reliable polling is now showing. Polling averages compiled by The Economist and YouGov show Trump leading Harris in several key battleground states. Trump is now leading in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania by 1 point. That's 2/3 of the blue wall. The averages show Trump leading by 2 percentage points in North Carolina, Georgia, and Arizona. The New York Times polling averages show the national race is deadlocked, with Harris now only leading Trump by 1 point. For the first time since July 22nd, Donald Trump has touched his ceiling of 48% again. And I know a lot of my listeners think they're being smart when they say, don't pay attention to the polls. The polls are very important, and so is a ground game. A good ground game, as I said earlier, is the difference between 1 to 3 points in key swing states. These polls take into account the fundamentals. The fundamentals are inflation and the economy, but they don't take into account the ground game. As I said earlier, Trump outsources ground game almost entirely to Elon Musk, when the evangelicals, with one of the most powerful get-out-the-vote machines ever in electoral politics, the evangelicals abandoned Trump after he moved to the center on abortion. Musk stepped in, and he is spending so far $100 million hiring mercenaries to knock on doors, relying on what Musk calls state-of-the-art technology to drill down and find the potential Trump voter who just needs a little encouragement from a warm, friendly pounding on the door. Reports began to surface last week that Musk's app, his brand new app, his state-of-the-art canvassing app, it completely crashed in Pennsylvania, making it impossible for Trump volunteers, not volunteers, these are mercenaries, Trump canvassers to find the right doors to knock on. The app crashed, so nobody knew what doors to knock on. And more importantly, because the app crashed, the canvassers couldn't get paid. Musk is paying his canvassers per knocked door. And with the app down, it was impossible for the canvassers to prove they did the work that they were supposed to be paid for. Now, keep in mind, likely Trump voters live in rural areas where canvassers have to drive long distances, and they are now complaining of wear and tear on their cars and not getting reimbursed for gas. Many of these canvassers are reportedly quitting, just not silently, just F you. And they're walking off their job, disappearing without even so much as a heads up for their supervisor. The Guardian reports this morning that canvassers working for Elon Musk's PAC, Get Out the Vote PAC, in Arizona and Nevada are lying about the work they're doing. This is a disaster. When you start accusing your campaign workers of fraud, you've lost the election. Data leaked over the weekend to The Guardian reveals that 24% of the door knocks in Arizona and 25% in the door knocks in Nevada turned out to be fake. Let me, just so we understand, Elon Musk is auditing his door knockers, his canvassers, and he discovered that 24% of the door knocks in Arizona and 25% of the door knocks in Nevada are fraudulent. Hard to believe Elon Musk and Donald Trump, who oppose unions and raising the minimum wage, would find it so difficult evoking loyalty from their workers. Hard to believe that somebody would commit fraud against Donald Trump. The fraudster has become the fraudee. You cannot win the Electoral College without a ground game. It's a game of inches. She's going to win the popular vote. The polls are tightening. There's no question about that. But the polls don't reflect a ground game that has totally failed. Total failure. Cannot be won, which is why they're already claiming voter fraud. Marjorie Taylor Greene is already claiming Dominion is switching votes in Georgia. This is the mop-up for October 22nd, 2024. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you so much for finding me. Please like this episode so I remain in your feed. And of course, the best way to help me and this community is by sharing this episode with your friends, like-minded people. The only reason I have an audience is because of my audience. And check out shopdavidfeldman.com. We have the worst-case scenario map on a mug now. It's a souvenir of the 2024 election. It shows that Kamala only needs to win the blue wall to get to 270. This will calm you down, especially if you put Jameson's in your coffee. This is the Donald Trump Predator mug. And, you know, we all have MAGA friends. Buy them this hat. It's a MAGA hat. And because they're all stupid, they won't be able to see on the back. It says low IQ individual. And this is my favorite, Trump in Edvard Munch's The Scream. It's a really beautiful mug. It looks great. It's a beautiful mug. I'm very proud of it. And if you want to break my heart and remind me that I haven't cultivated an audience as smart as I think I have, go buy my bestseller, The Chef's Apron with the words, "Hope you're in the mood for diarrhea." This is my bestseller, and it breaks my heart. Halloween is just around the corner. Check out the Halloween collection. This is pretty scary. This is a souvenir from Donald Trump's 2029 inaugural ball. Don't Melania and Donald look happy and healthy? Governor Walz campaigned in Omaha's 2nd congressional district on Saturday. Now, that district is Omaha's blue dot surrounding Omaha, which will yield one electoral vote, since Nebraska, like Maine, is not a winner-take-all state. Republican Don Bacon represents the 2nd District. Democratic State Senator Tony Vargas, a former public school teacher, is running once again for that seat, a seat he lost to Bacon in 2022 by fewer than 6,000 votes. Vargas and Walz played to a packed amphitheater where Coach Walz mocked Donald Trump's weird behavior on the campaign trail.
I saw Donald Trump's mic went bad in Detroit. You do not want me dancing for 20 minutes like this dude.
I love him so much. I just love this guy. Then Coach Walz, who as football coach advised his high school's first club for LGBTQ students, he said, "I'm going to advise this LGBTQ club because I'm the football coach, and it will be monumental if a football coach supports the LGBTQ club." After commenting on Donald Trump's dance moves, Coach Walz said this.
Somebody on his staff should explain the YMCA song to him, too, just so they know.
I've been saying that for years. Well, it's all part of the Trump con. The YMCA song is part of the Trump con. He gets off watching his homophobic MAGA morons dance unwittingly to a gay anthem. Trump hung out at Studio 54 in the late 70s with Roy Cohn. Trump knows exactly what YMCA, what that song is all about. Trump spoke Saturday in Latrobe, Pennsylvania, the birthplace of golf's late, great Arnold Palmer. So naturally, as any candidate for higher office would do, Trump praised the size of Arnold Palmer's putter. Well, you've all heard this story. These are the words that Donald Trump said about Arnold Palmer's putter. These are the words verbatim. But instead of Trump, let's listen to these words from a cartoon character. Some of my listeners know I'm learning animation, and I thought, as I listened to Donald Trump talking about Arnold Palmer's putter, talking in front of women, in front of children, I thought, this guy either belongs in a padded cell or is the useful idiot for the fossil fuel industry and Vladimir Putin. I mean, you watch him, you go, yeah, and that's a useful idiot who belongs in a padded cell, but I can see how ExxonMobil and Vladimir Putin want to keep him around. So these are the words, not just of a presidential candidate, but the words of a former president who the entire Republican Party is terrified of. I put this verbatim in somebody else's mouth just so you realize how scary it is.
Arnold Palmer was all man, and I say that in all due respect to women. And I love women, but this is a guy that was all man. This man was strong and tough, but when he took showers with the other pros, they came out of there. They said, "Oh my God, that's unbelievable." I had to say it. But we have women that are highly sophisticated here. But they used to look at Arnold. They said, "Man, but he was really something special. Arnold was something special." So I just want to tell you, you're very lucky. And I had to tell you the sour part of it, because it's true. What can I tell you? We want to be honest. We want to be upfront. It's true.
If anybody else said these words, you would put them in a padded cell. Well, meanwhile, Arnold Palmer's older daughter, Peg, told Thomas Hauser from Sporting News back in 2018 that before passing away, Arnold Palmer made it clear to her what he thought of Donald Trump. She said, "My dad and I were at home in Latrobe. He died in September, so this was before the election. The television was on, Trump was talking, and my dad made a sound of disgust, a sound like he couldn't believe the arrogance and crudeness of this man who was the nominee of the political party that my father believed in. Then my dad said, quote, 'He's not as smart as we thought he was,' and walked out of the room. What would my dad think of Donald Trump today? I think he'd cringe." Appearing on Fox News Sunday, Donald Trump was asked how vindictive he would be as president.
I want to drill down on this question of retribution because against your political opponents, because you've had opportunities to walk that back. And my question is this: are you prepared to say now that you will not use law enforcement to punish or prosecute your political opponents?
And naturally, Donald Trump insisted he's the aggrieved party in all this.
That's what they're using on me.
Okay, so your stance is that they started.
Before you start this,
Yeah, I got it.
Howie, that's what they're using on me. I've got DAs. I've got everybody. They look at me. There's never been anything like this.
There's never been anything like this because there's never been a con artist of this magnitude propped up by the world's wealthiest charlatans.
They have weaponized government against me.
They've weaponized government against him. When Trump is told he owes hundreds of millions of dollars to the IRS because he hasn't paid his taxes for decades, he immediately says, the government is being weaponized against me. When
But are you willing to use the same tactics?
No, I don't want to do that because that's a bad thing for the country. I don't want to do that. I don't know who said. I haven't said that I would.
I haven't said that I would. He's denying that he said that he would seek revenge when he gets into the Oval Office. As far back as 2016, Donald Trump was promising to lock Hillary up. His chief of staff, General John F. Kelly, said that in 2022, Trump ordered him to order the IRS to order former FBI chiefs Comey and McCabe to punish them for looking into Russiagate. Both men mysteriously were then subjected to the mother of all audits. There's an audit that the IRS does. Very few people get it. It costs a lot of money. And they say it's been described as a colonoscopy. Comey and McCabe were subjected to the mother of all audits. Many of Trump's orders as president were completely ignored because he accidentally appointed institutionalists who put government before party loyalty. But Project 2025 clearly states Trump will accomplish way more during his second administration because they're going to make sure the entire executive branch will only be loyal to him. Throughout this campaign, Trump has been describing Democrats as, quote, the enemy within, and has promised to punish them.
I think the bigger problem is the enemy from within, not even the people that have come in and destroying our country. By the way, totally destroying our country. The towns, the villages, they're being inundated. But I don't think they're the problem in terms of election day. I think the bigger problem are the people from within. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. And I think they're and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military, because they can't let that happen.
Now, he denies he says that. He says it over and over and over again. Trump makes no apologies, taking a page from the Hitler playbook by talking about the enemy within poisoning our blood and soil.
You talk about the enemy within. There's enemies, America's enemies outside. The enemy within is a pretty ominous phrase if you're talking about other Americans.
I think it's accurate. I think it's accurate.
Who are you talking about?
And,
the enemy?
I heard that. They say, oh, the enemy. On the outside, you have Russia, you have China, you have a lot of different groups. If you have a smart president, they can be easily handled. I handled them. We had no wars. We had no wars.
Yeah, Trump conveniently forgets that he promised to end the war in Afghanistan, but failed to pull our troops out. He is an effing liar. We had no wars. What was Afghanistan? And then, where am I? And then, after denying he ever promised to punish his enemies, Trump promised to punish his enemies.
Adam Shifty Schiff, he's a crooked guy. He's a crooked politician, 100%. He's going to be a senator now. Can you believe it?
But again, he's a political opponent of yours.
He's not an enemy. No, he is, of course, he's an enemy. He's an enemy. He wanted to put my son in jail, and my son didn't even know what he was talking about. He wanted to put my son in jail on a scam that he made up called Russia, Russia, Russia. He, Hillary Clinton, and a group of people made up a scam. And they came out of a room and they said, Donald Trump Jr. will be going to jail over this. And my son called me and said, what did I do? He knew nothing about Russia. It had nothing to do with him. Think of how bad you have to be when you say you're going to put any son, not just, a president's son, but any son. You're going to put somebody in jail on a scam that you knew was made up by you.
Trump is very protective of Don Jr. It's why he constantly berates Don Jr. in public. He calls Don Jr. an idiot in public and publicly says, I wish I never gave him my name.
He wanted to put my son in jail, and my son didn't even know what he was talking about.
Not the first time Don Jr. didn't know what somebody was talking about.
And my son called me and said, what did I do? He knew nothing about Russia.
Don Jr. knows nothing about Russia. Don Jr. knows nothing about anything. Don Jr. is an incredibly stupid man. Back in 2016, he was jealous that Jared Kushner had his father's ear instead of his oldest son having the ear. One of the reasons the Trumps get away with so much is because everyone says, they're stupid. He didn't know. They didn't know they were breaking the law. There are some basic laws about elections. Campaigns are forbidden from taking any donations from foreign governments. Let's just say like Russia. Because the thinking goes, if a presidential candidate took money from, say, let's just say Vladimir Putin, if that candidate then became president, he would jeopardize our national security by doing favors for Vladimir Putin. So by law, you're not allowed to take money from any foreign governments or foreigners, for that matter. You can only take money, if you're a candidate, from American citizens or people, I believe, with green cards. I'm not certain, but I think people with green cards can donate to a campaign. Now, there is such a thing as a contribution in kind. It's a little cloudy, the term, a contribution in kind. What is a contribution in kind? Well, it's illegal. A contribution in kind would be, hey, I know I can't give Donald Trump any money because I'm Vladimir Putin and I live in Russia, but what if I give him dirt on Hillary Clinton that my spy agencies have dug up on her? That, among many things, is also a contribution in kind. Putin, instead of cold, hard cash, would be giving the Trump campaign information that, conceivably, would be worth millions of dollars. And it would be the difference between Trump winning and losing the 2016 presidential election. For example, hacking the Democratic Party's emails in 2016 and then turning them over to WikiLeaks. The Russians did that. Julian Assange pretty much said as much. Those emails turned out to be somewhat embarrassing to Hillary Clinton and the Democratic Party. Now, if Vladimir Putin does that without coordinating with the Trump campaign, there's really nothing the Justice Department can do to the Trump campaign, even though they're the beneficiary of those leaked emails. But if the Trump campaign was working with Russia in 2016, then that email hack, whether it was coordinated implicitly or explicitly with Vladimir Putin, it is criminal. On June 3rd, 2016, when Trump had pretty much secured the GOP nomination, Donald Trump Jr. received an email from one of his father's Russian business partners telling Don Jr. that someone high up in the Kremlin had dirt on Hillary Clinton that would be incredibly valuable to Donald Trump in the general election. The email said the information, quote, would incriminate Hillary and her dealings with Russia and would be very useful to your father. The email goes on to say, quote, this is obviously very high level and sensitive information, but is part of Russia and its government's support for Mr. Trump, unquote. And Don Jr. broke the law immediately by writing back, quote, if it's what you say, I love it, especially later in the summer. Boom, he broke the law. He proceeded to set up a series of meetings between top Trump campaign aides, including Kushner and Steve Bannon and the Russian operative. Illegal. Now, nothing came of it, supposedly. At least nothing specifically came from that meeting, because anything Don Jr. sets up fails. But setting up that meeting was against the law. Attending that meeting was against the law. Not reporting the offer from Russia to the FBI is also against the law. But Don Jr.'s defense, Don Sr.'s defense, we're stupid. We're new to this. We don't know what the law regarding foreign interference in elections is. Well, then maybe you shouldn't be running for president. Presidents are supposed to know the law and not be stupid. But Don Sr. is a strong believer in keeping the family out of it. Leave my family out of this. That's what he said. They came after my son. Don Sr. insists the government should leave his children alone the same way Donald Trump left his children alone for decades. That's the way it works in Trump land. Donald Trump only hires his children to break the law, right? But when you try to prosecute them for ripping off lenders or violating election law, all of a sudden it's a personal attack on my family. Well, if you don't want your family attacked, indicted, arrested, don't hire them. Don't bring them into your campaign. or your White House. Trump's children are all stupid, and nobody else will hire them. So he knows he can exact both loyalty and omerta from them. Those are his useful idiots, his children. Nobody else would hire Eric, Ivanka, or Don Jr., and they know that. So they're going to be loyal, and they're going to keep their mouths shut.
Think of how bad you have to be when you say you're going to put any son, not just, a president's son, but any son, you're going to put somebody in jail on a scam that you knew was made up by you.
Yeah, because we all know Donald Trump would never try to score cheap political points off Hunter Biden's battle with addiction, right? Leave the kids out of it. Leave the kids out of it. That's what Donald Trump says. Let's be clear here. The reason Donald Trump got impeached the first time was because he asked the president of Ukraine to interfere in the 2020 presidential election. That's illegal. Let's be clear. Donald Trump knew Joe Biden was going to get the nomination. So in 2019, he ordered Rudy Giuliani to dig up dirt on Hunter Biden because Trump knew Hunter was in the throes of addiction. The reason Trump got impeached the first time was because Mr. Leave My Children Out of This was all in on destroying Hunter Biden's life by spreading dirt about his ties to a somewhat corrupt gas company called Burisma. Trump's very first impeachment came about because he was trying to destroy Hunter Biden. During Trump's perfect phone call to the newly elected president of Ukraine back in 2019, Trump threatened to hold up a shipment of weapons unless Zelensky gave him dirt on Hunter Biden. Here is Pete Williams from NBC News on September 25th, 2019, reporting on the whistleblower who sat in on a phone conversation between Donald Trump and the newly elected president of Ukraine, where Trump said he was going to hold up a congressionally authorized shipment of weapons unless Ukraine gave him dirt on Hunter Biden.
Trump says this. He says, I heard you had a prosecutor who was very good and was shut down, which is really unfair. And then he says, quote, there's a lot of talk about Biden's son, what Biden stopped the prosecution. And a lot of people want to find out about that. So whatever you can do with the attorney general would be great. Biden went around bragging that he stopped the prosecution. So if you can look into it, it sounds horrible to me. And Zelensky replies that he's appointing a new prosecutor who will soon, quote, look into the situation.
Okay, we've been over this countless times. The lie, the big lie invented by Rudy Giuliani is Biden didn't want the prosecutor, Viktor Shokin, to look into the corruption inside Burisma, a Ukrainian gas company that Biden's son Hunter was working for. This is the lie. The truth is, Vice President Biden told Ukraine to fire Shokin on orders from President Obama, the EU, and Western bankers. Biden didn't decide to fire Shokin. Obama, the bankers, the EU did. They believe Shokin was corrupt and not prosecuting Ukrainian oligarchs or shady business people. This lie was invented by Rudy Giuliani, who was sent to Ukraine in 2019 to dig up dirt on Hunter Biden. Trump withheld congressionally authorized weapons for Ukraine to fight Russia in the Donbass region. Before the invasion, Russia and Ukraine were fighting in the Donbass region. Russia had seized Crimea. They needed weapons. Even before that phone call with Zelensky, Trump was delaying $250 million in military aid that had already been authorized. Why? Why? Before the phone call with Zelensky, Trump was already being accused by Democrats of withholding aid to Zelensky on orders from Vladimir Putin. But by late 2019, the Mueller investigation into Putin's hold over Trump had been squashed by Trump's Attorney General, Bill Barr. It no longer became politically expedient to accuse Donald Trump of being blackmailed by Vladimir Putin. So the first impeachment, at the beginning of 2020, was more about Trump holding up an arms shipment in order to get dirt on Hunter Biden, and less about Trump delaying the arms shipment to benefit Trump's benefactor, Putin. This is really important. Back in 2020, Bob Woodward had a book out where he spoke with Dan Coats, who was Donald Trump's director of national intelligence. Coats is a Republican. He was Donald Trump's director of national intelligence. The director of national intelligence is in charge of most of our nation's spy agencies. He provides the president with his daily intelligence briefings about hotspots around the world. Dan Coats was fired by Trump in 2019, right around the time of Trump's perfect phone call with Zelensky. By the way, Trump also fired the whistleblower who reported the phone call. Trump fired his chief of intelligence, Dan Coats, because Coats had drawn Trump's wrath by telling him that Russia very much indeed interfered in the 2016 presidential election to help Trump get elected. And Coats warned that Russia was once again setting plans in motion to interfere with the upcoming 2020 presidential election. So Trump fired him. In Woodward's 2020 book, Coats, the head of intelligence for Trump, is quoted as saying he had no doubt that Donald Trump did whatever Vladimir Putin told him to do because Putin was blackmailing him. This would be Dan Coats, Republican, the Republican head of our spy agencies under Donald Trump. He said Russiagate, Russia was real, so Trump fired him. Now, here's the thing about Russiagate. It's very complicated. It's a full-time job keeping track of all the names and its complexities. There are many liberals, many people on the left, who insist Russiagate was a hoax. Why? Because they hate Hillary and they're intellectually lazy. They don't want to do the work to sort it all out. And it's easier to just say Hillary lost in 2016 because she's an unlikable war hawk who didn't campaign in Michigan. It's what intellectual cowards do. It's like blaming Ralph Nader for George W. Bush. It's intellectually lazy. Just find one boogeyman and you can move on with your life. And by the way, I get a lot of this. I've been over the polls, but a lot of people write to me and say, stop listening to the polls. Now, I'll do a postmortem after the election on the polls. There's no question that several top polling units who make up the averages are using a discredited methodology that skews the results right now in Trump's favor. I've been over that. But anyone who makes a blanket statement that the polls are all wrong, you're a lazy thinker. It's like the people who don't want to look into what happened with Russia. You don't know what you're talking about if you just issue a blanket dismissal of all the polls. But it does kind of make you think you sound smart. You're wrong. And by the way, when you crap on the polls, you're doing Donald Trump's work for him. So keep crapping on the polls. Okay? That's what Donald Trump wants you to do. We need the polls in the lead up to Election Day, and we need the exit polls on Election Day to prove to Donald Trump there was no voter fraud. When Jimmy Carter traveled around the world certifying elections, spreading democracy, he relied on polls, exit polls, to prove voter fraud. We know Maduro was fraudulently elected because of the polls. So I know a lot of lazy thinkers who listen to me think they're smart when they say, stop paying attention to the polls. You're not that smart. You need to learn about polling. Polls are the guardrails of democracy. When you say, stop paying attention to the polls, you're just using that as an excuse not to study something. In other words, you're stupid. And I'm sick of hearing from my listeners telling me, stop with the polls already. Don't listen to this show if you don't want to hear about the polls. The polls move everything in this country. Bills don't get... The reason we don't have Medicare for all, you effing moron, is because it doesn't poll well enough. So don't tell me to stop paying attention to the polls. Some people are just arrogant pricks like me, but on this I'm right. Are polls perfect? No. Is it an exact science? Pretty much. I mean, they get things wrong, but it's a pretty exact science. They got Georgia in 2020 and Arizona within like 0.2 of a percentage point. Okay, I don't want to get into it right now, but don't tell me to stop paying attention to polls. If you don't like, listen to some other show, please. I've done way too many programs explaining why polls serve as actual guardrails of democracy. And when you diminish the polls, you're doing Donald Trump's work. He wants the polls not to be trusted so he can claim voter fraud. You're really an idiot to tell me to stop paying attention to polls. Where was I? Sorry, it just makes me angry that I have listeners like this. Okay, Trump on Fox Sunday. Here he is taking the moral high ground, insisting politicians must leave our children out of all this partisan bickering.
Think of how bad you have to be when you say you're going to put any son, not just, a president's son, but any son, you're going to put somebody in jail.
Yeah. Think about how bad you would be to threaten to put somebody's son in jail. Headline from Rolling Stone magazine, July 11th, 2023. Trump blasts prosecutor he appointed for not giving Hunter Biden a death sentence. Okay. I love that. In 2023, the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, told Bob Woodward that after January 6, he called his Chinese counterpart to assure him Trump wasn't going to do anything crazy like attack them. After January 6, Mark Milley got on the phone with counterparts around the world saying, yeah, don't worry, he's almost gone. Upon hearing that news, Donald Trump said on Truth Social that Milley committed treason and should be executed. General Milley, who recently called Trump a fascist to the core, says he has no doubt that if Donald Trump finds his way back into the office, Milley, will be dragged out of retirement, court-martialed, and imprisoned. Then, after denying he ever said he would prosecute his political opponents, Trump said he would only prosecute the enemy within. But it turns out the enemies from within he's promising to prosecute also happen to be his political opponents. I mean, what are the odds of that?
That's an enemy from within. That is a threat to democracy. These are bad people. We have a lot of bad people. But when you look at Shifty Schiff and some of the others, they are, to me, the enemy from within. I think Nancy Pelosi is an enemy from within.
Then Trump, of course, played the victim card and complained about how the Justice Department has been weaponized against him.
The biggest case was the one down in Florida.
Yeah, the one down in Florida. You might remember Special Counsel Jack Smith indicted Donald Trump for violating the Espionage Act and obstruction of justice. Why? Because Trump refused the National Archives' demand that he turn over classified documents after leaving office. He would travel with his boxes of classified material and show people war plans. Back in 2023, Trump was charged with 37 felony counts involving willful retention of classified documents and conspiracy to obstruct justice. In a later superseding indictment, Trump was charged with ordering Mar-a-Lago's information technology chief to destroy security cam footage. Footage that is believed to show Trump's valet, Walt Nauta, hiding boxes of classified material from the FBI before they arrived for their court-ordered search. It wasn't a raid. Donald Trump calls it a raid. It wasn't a raid. They didn't kick open the doors. There was a warrant. Trump knew they were coming, which is why he allegedly had plenty of time to order his valet, Walt Nauta, to hide all the boxes. The FBI, in their search, found classified documents spread out on the floor, as well as boxes of classified documents stored in unsecured locations, like a Mar-a-Lago bathroom right off to the side of a banquet room. But Trump continues to lie, insisting, quote, I beat the classified documents case. Here he is, lying Sunday on Fox News.
The biggest case was the one down in Florida, and I beat it 100%. I won the case.
Trump didn't win the case because it never went to trial. A partisan judge he appointed, Eileen Cannon, an intellectual lightweight, tossed the case out.
I won the case because we had number one, a brilliant judge and a judge that moved rather rapidly, and I won the case.
Rather rapidly. Judge Eileen Cannon slow-walked that trial. Judge Eileen Cannon waited until the Supreme Court's July 1st ruling on partial immunity for ex-presidents before throwing the case out. Judge Cannon based her ridiculous decision to throw the classified material case out not on partial immunity for ex-presidents. She couldn't, because the crimes Trump allegedly committed in all this happened after he left office. Ex-presidents who commit crimes don't have immunity. So she couldn't base it on their July 1st partial immunity ruling. Instead, she based her ruling on something Clarence Thomas wrote in his concurring opinion on partial immunity on July 1st for ex-presidents. Apropos of nothing in particular, the very corrupt Clarence Thomas suggested that the job of special counsel may be constitutionally unsound since special counsel Jack Smith wasn't approved by the Senate. The thinking, if you want to call it that, is that Jack Smith is a U.S. attorney, therefore he must be approved by the Senate, not appointed by Attorney General Merrick Garland without a Senate confirmation. So, Judge Cannon tossed the classified materials case out, claiming the special counsel's office is constitutionally illegitimate. No stare decisis, based on what? Based on a thought by Clarence Thomas in a concurring opinion that has not been decided upon by any judge. Trump wasn't found innocent in the classified documents trial. A partisan judge temporarily tossed it out based on the fevered musings of the very corrupt Clarence Thomas. Jack Smith has already appealed Judge Cannon's ruling. The classified case is very much alive, and Donald Trump is lying when he says he won it. Then, on Fox News, Trump lied again, comparing his classified documents case to Joe Biden's, as Howard Kurtz of Fox News nods his head acquiescently in agreement.
By the way, Biden had almost the same case, but he didn't have the Presidential Records Act because he wasn't the president. Just to finish, and he got off on the basis that he's incompetent. Essentially that he's incompetent.
Trump's lies about Joe Biden's classified documents case went completely unchecked.
And it was a strange ruling because they said, number one, he's incompetent, so he's not going to be guilty. But the prosecutor actually said he's guilty, but he's incompetent.
Robert Hur, the prosecutor, was appointed by special counsel, was appointed special counsel by Attorney General Merrick Garland to look into allegations that Joe Biden retained classified material after he left the office of vice president. What happened was, after Donald Trump got charged with hoarding classified material, they found out that Vice President Mike Pence and Joe Biden, as vice president, also accidentally took home classified material. Vice President Biden. So to show that it was equal justice under the law, Merrick Garland appointed Robert Hur, a Republican, to be the special counsel to look into Joe Biden's alleged mishandling of classified documents. Vice President Biden and Vice President Mike Pence both accidentally brought boxes of classified documents home with them after they left office. The difference between Trump and Biden is when Biden and Mike Pence was informed he accidentally took classified documents home with him, he immediately returned them. No questions asked. Special counsel Hur said he didn't bring charges against Joe Biden because Biden could make a convincing case to a jury that he brought the material home thinking it belonged to him, since the documents were primarily his personal notebooks. They were letters he wrote, classified letters, and notebooks he wrote that were classified. Special counsel Hur said he didn't bring charges because there wasn't enough evidence to suggest Joe Biden knew the documents were classified. Unlike Trump, special counsel Hur added, Biden cooperated fully and turned them over immediately. Hur said, this is nothing compared to what Donald Trump did. Hur also said by the time Biden learned there were boxes of classified material in his home, he was already president, so there was no longer any need for him to return them. Hers said Biden honestly believed the documents belonged to him because they were primarily his own writings. Hers said because Biden insisted it was commonplace for former vice presidents to keep their own notebooks, it would be hard for a jury to convict. Republicans, and especially Trump, seized on her, saying one of the reasons it would be difficult to convict Biden is because a jury would be sympathetic to an elderly man with a faulty memory. In his narrative, special counsel, Hur, broke with precedent to offer up unsolicited reflections on Biden's memory, which Attorney General Merrick Garland should have redacted before the report was issued. It was irrelevant. I'm out of time. I'm going to be correcting Donald Trump's lies from now until Election Day. It's one lie after another. He's never guilty. He's never wrong. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. This has been the Mop-Up for October 22nd, 2024. Please like this episode so I remain in your feed. Please share it. The best way to help me is to share these episodes. Please check out shopdavidfeldman.com. Pick up worst case scenario map on a mug, the Predator mug, the MAGA mug. What else do we have here? And I love this. The Scream mug. And I hope you're in the mood for diarrhea. Not the apron. I'm just saying, I hope you're all in the mood for diarrhea. No, I have a chef's apron. That's my big seller. That says, I hope you're in the mood for diarrhea. And, of course, the Halloween collection, the souvenir from Donald Trump's 2029 inaugural ball. I have some pretty offensive stuff for Halloween over at shopdavidfeldman.com. I didn't mean to snap at some of my listeners who keep writing to me about the polls, but I keep going over this, and I don't know how many times I have to stake my position on why polls are the guardrails of democracy, and it just makes me angry. I read all your comments, obviously, so I didn't mean to snap. These are tense times. Be nice to everybody. She's going to win. Be nice to everybody. If you're scared, you should be. Don't be complacent. I remember 2016. Nobody thought Hillary was going to lose. I'm glad we're all scared. I'll see you at 2:30 a.m., probably the day after tomorrow. I probably need to chill. Thank you all. Thank you to Bob and Mila for keeping the conversation civil in the chat room. Bye-bye.